What really makes Saturn Saturn? And Jupiter Jupiter? Come on, Arlo. Aren't they just, well, planets?
By the blazing constellations, Ella. Not in the traditional view. Each planet carries its own distinct nature, its elemental qualities. That's what makes them unique.
Sure, but the ancients didn't have telescopes. How could they possibly figure out a planet's qualities? It sounds more like guesswork.
It's not about collecting rock samples, Ella. Ptolemy, for instance, observed how distance from the sun or Earth influenced a planet's nature. His reasoning is straightforward and more convincing than you'd think.
I don't know. I still don't see how this helps us in practice.
These elemental qualities are at the heart of classical astrology. By understanding each planet's inherent character, how it's hot or cold, moist or dry, we see how it truly shapes a birth chart.
All right. You've piqued my curiosity. I'll give it a chance. But don't expect me to swallow it all without question.
Welcome back to the 5th episode of our Learning Traditional Astrology series. I'm Arlo, with 10 years of experience in traditional astrology, and joining me, as always, are Ella, Clara, and Cherry. Care to say hello, everyone?
Thanks, Arlo. Hi, I'm Ella, originally from a modern astrology background, now venturing into the traditional side.
I'm Clara, happy to be learning all these classical methods with you.
Hello everyone. I'm Cherry, your robotic assistant, here to help decode the mysteries of traditional astrology.
Great. Today's focus is on the elemental qualities of the planets. In our previous lessons, we covered how fire, air, water, and earth are each made from hot, cold, moist, or dry. Now, we apply those same Aristotelian principles to the planets themselves.
Aristotle again, huh? I'm not sure how these 4 qualities add anything fresh. I've already dealt with the planets for 3 years, and it worked fine without all this ancient framework.
By the blazing constellations. Ella, you're underestimating the power of tradition. In classical astrology, these elemental attributes shape each planet's core nature. They're crucial for understanding planetary interactions in a birth chart.
So what exactly are these qualities? Could you give us a quick summary?
Absolutely. Ella, would you read our short summary of each planet's qualities?
Sure. Saturn is excessively cold and dry. Jupiter is moderately hot and moist. Mars is hot and excessively dry. The Sun is hot and dry, with heat being dominant. Venus is moderately hot and moist, especially moist. Mercury varies, sometimes dry, sometimes moist. And the Moon is moderately hot and moist.
Interesting. So each planet pairs up qualities like hot and dry, hot and moist, cold and dry, and so on.
Still feels arbitrary. Where's the logic behind Saturn's dryness or Jupiter's moistness? Modern astrology doesn't usually bring this up.
It's definitely not arbitrary. Ancient astrologers, particularly Ptolemy and his Tetrabiblos, started with the sun and the moon. Cherry, can you quote Ptolemy's description of the sun first?
Certainly, Arlo. Ptolemy says, the active power of the sun's essential nature is found to be heating and, to a certain degree, drying. This is made more easily perceptible by its size and by the obviousness of its seasonal changes, for the closer it approaches the zenith, the more it affects us in this way.
So, as you can see, the sun's essential heat is unmistakable. Dryness is a secondary effect of that heat.
All right, the sun being hot is obvious. But the moon is listed as moist. Where does that come from?
Good question. Cherry, can you read Ptolemy's passage on the moon?
Ptolemy explains, most of the moon's power consists of humidifying, clearly because it is close to the earth and because of the moist exhalations therefrom. Its action therefore is precisely this, to soften and cause putrefaction in bodies for the most part, but it shares moderately also in heating power because of the light which it receives from the sun.
The moon's nearness to Earth gives it that moist quality, think tides, and it carries a bit of warmth by reflecting the sun's light.
I suppose that makes sense. Sun is hot and dry, moon is moist with some heat.
From these two luminaries, Ptolemy deduced the natures of the other planets, partly by their distance from the sun's heat and Earth's moisture. Saturn, being the farthest planet visible to the naked eye, gets labeled cold and dry.
In Tetrabiblos, Ptolemy states, Saturn produces cold and dryness, for he is most remote both from the sun's heat and from the Earth's vapors. but he is more effective in the production of cold than dryness.
Alright, so Saturn is literally the opposite end? No heat, no moisture. I guess that's logical in an ancient model.
Exactly. Now let's move on to Mars. Cherry, would you mind quoting Ptolemy for Mars?
The nature of Mars is chiefly to dry and to burn, in conformity with his fiery color and by reason of his nearness to the Sun, for the Sun's sphere lies just below him.
Could you explain that, Clara?
Sure, Mars is close to the Sun, so it picks up heat. Its red color symbolizes aggression or war, aligning with hot and excessively dry qualities.
Precisely. Mars brims with fire and dryness, reflecting its classical depiction of violence and conflict.
Okay, so we've established Saturn as cold and dry, but now you're telling me Jupiter is moderately hot and moist. How does that even make sense if it's also far from the Earth and Moon?
Patience, Ella. Remember, traditional astrology isn't just about physical distance, it's about how ancient astrologers perceived each planet's role and surroundings. Cherry, could you quote Ptolemy on Jupiter?
Certainly, Arlo. Ptolemy writes, Jupiter has a temperactive force because his movement takes place between the cooling influence of Saturn and the burning power of Mars. He both heats and humidifies, and because his heating power is the greater by reason of the underlying spheres, he produces fertilizing winds.
There you have it. Jupiter is caught between Saturn's chill and Mars's heat, plus some influence from the Sun below. That blend makes Jupiter moderately hot and moist.
Moderately hot, I can accept, but moisture? That sounds random.
Maybe it's like the heat of Jupiter is enough to melt the frozen peaks of Saturn, causing a cosmic condensation.
Oh please, Clara, that's quite the imaginative leap. Are you serious?
By Saturn's stern gaze. Ella, give her a break. Clara's analogy might be off scientifically, but that's not our main concern. We're following Ptolemy's worldview. Knowing how the ancients categorized the planets is what counts. As I often say, modern science will catch up eventually.
Exactly. It's enough to understand that in traditional astrology, Jupiter is considered moderately hot and moist. We don't need a modern lab experiment to prove it.
Fine, I'll take your word for it, for now. Let's keep going. So next up, Venus is labeled moderately hot and moist. Same question, where does the moisture come from this time?
Cherry, please enlighten us with Ptolemy's words on Venus.
Ptolemy states, Venus has the same powers and tempered nature as Jupiter, but acts in the opposite way, for she warms moderately because of her nearness to the Sun, but chiefly humidifies, like the Moon, because of the amount of her own light and because she appropriates the exhalations from the moist atmosphere surrounding the Earth.
You see, Venus's sphere is closer to the Sun, hence moderate heat, but she's also nearer to the Earth and Moon, making her more moist. Think of her as a mix of gentle warmth and lush moisture.
I guess that makes sense in a symbolic way. So she's basically a less intense version of the Sun and Moon combined?
More or less, she's often described as more moist than hot. It fits her associations with fertility, love, and harmony.
Okay, I'm on board with that. But what about Mercury? The notes say it can be both dry and moist. That sounds contradictory.
Yes, Mercury is tricky. Cherry, can you quote Ptolemy's take on Mercury?
Of course. Ptolemy writes, Mercury in general is found at certain times alike to be drying and absorptive of moisture, because he never is far removed in longitude from the heat of the Sun, and again humidifying, because he is next above the sphere of the Moon, which is closest to the Earth, and to change quickly from one to the other, inspired as it were by the speed of his motion in the neighborhood of the Sun itself.
So Mercury can be either dry or moist, depending on its orbit?
Essentially, yes. Mercury is constantly shifting position relative to the Sun and Moon. He sometimes behaves like the Sun, dry, other times more like the Moon, moist and changeable.
That fits Mercury's reputation for quick thinking, communication, and adaptability in modern astrology too.
I guess so, but it still feels ambiguous.
Precisely. Mercury is meant to be ambiguous, swift and chameleon-like. If you find it too confusing, you can always label Mercury primarily as dry, knowing it can also shift to moist. Different astrologers have different takes. Alright, we've now covered all 7 traditional planets. Clara, can you quickly recap their core qualities?
Sure. Saturn, excessively cold and dry. Jupiter, moderately hot and moist. Mars, hot and excessively dry. Sun, hot and dry, with heat dominant. Venus, moderately hot and moist, emphasizing moisture. Mercury, sometimes dry, sometimes moist, varies. Moon, moderately hot and moist.
Well, that was thorough. I still think some of it is a stretch, but I'll go along for now.
Your skepticism is welcome, Ella. It keeps us sharp. But these qualities form the backbone of traditional planetary interpretation.
I appreciate having a solid foundation. I like the idea that each planet has a distinct personality grounded in these elemental attributes.
Exactly, Clara. And speaking of new personalities, before we move on, I have an announcement. We're welcoming a new member to our team.
Wait, seriously? Another addition? You're building quite the roster, Arlo.
Indeed. Her name is Katrina, and she'll be joining us in the next scene. Let's wrap up here, and then we can give her a proper introduction. Everyone, meet our newest team member, Katrina. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Arlo. Hello, Ella. Hello, Clara. Hello, Cherry. I'm so glad to be here, just dashed over from the hospital.
You're a nurse? How exactly did you stumble upon our little astrology project, Katrina?
I followed Arlo's series on YouTube for a while. I'm passionate about traditional astrology, plus I have a degree in political science. I love researching historical figures and analyzing personalities, especially from Indian history. When Arlo said he needed someone for deeper dives, I volunteered.
Deeper dives, huh? Arlo, you do like springing surprises on us. This is the second time you've brought someone in without warning.
Life is all about bold moves, Ella. Katrina has a sharp mind for research, and that's exactly what we need.
Works for me. Katrina, I also have a deep interest in history, so I'd love to hear more about your background in political science.
I'd be happy to share, Clara. My focus on political science pairs well with traditional astrology, understanding power dynamics, historical context, and the personalities that shaped them.
Well, if you say so. Let's hope your talents truly enhance our research. I'm still on guard, you know. I like to question everything.
Questioning is good, Ella. It keeps us all sharp.
Excellent. Now that we're all here, I'm confident we'll unravel even more dimensions of traditional astrology. We've got a great mix of backgrounds: nursing, history, modern astrology, and pure tradition.
Optimizing group synergy by 37%. New data sets can be processed with greater efficiency.
Cherry, you never miss a beat, do you?
Thank you for watching. We hope you're enjoying our step-by-step deep dive into traditional astrology. If you missed the last episode on Charles Dickens' birth chart, be sure to check it out.
And of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you.
Until next time, farewell, everyone.
Bye.